game overseas for the new year. We've got the 2-1 Atlanta Falcons playing against what you could almost just call the London Jaguars at this point, with
Yeah.
as many times as Jacksonville's been over there. Jacksonville 1-2, so maybe a get right spot here. Jags are favored by 3 by Vegas, and total is set at 43.5. So, Gage, what are your first thoughts on this international game?
Like we talked about last week, first thing I can think about is this young quarterback, Desmond Ritter, having a really big road game here, and not just any normal road game, having to go overseas, having to do something he's probably never done in his life against a team that's, I think, since the London series started, I think we counted it up, it was like 9 times the Jaguars have gone over there and played. So a team that kind of knows what they're doing against a guy that's never done this before is kind of the first thing that I'm seeing here, which is leaning me towards the Jags in a game that I probably would lean towards Atlanta in the state side, but I do think this is going to play a big role. So not a huge game for me this week, but a game that I'm definitely going to be looking for the Jags to try to bounce back in.
Yeah, very interesting game because, of course, kicking off over there in London, it's going to be on as a solo game Sunday morning. Be able to wake up, get whatever, get yourself going, watch some football while you're waiting for the 1 p.m. slate. Love what you're mentioning against Ritter because we'll keep banging the drum against this. Pretty sure high school, college, NFL, he's undefeated at home. But like we saw last week, 6 points in a game is just, it's not going to be good enough. Lions are pretty good on defense, so we don't expect them to go out there and put 35 up. But with this improved Atlanta defense, we definitely need to see a little bit more.
Right.
So are you leaning into maybe playing that -3 with the Jags, or what are you thinking here?
Yeah, I'm thinking maybe this could end up being a straight play. I would love to get the -2.5 if possible. -3 is definitely a play. But like we've seen a lot with these London games, they tend to be, a last second field goal, it seems like, in some of these games where it's these middle of the road teams that are always going to be super tough. But I think the experience gets the Jags over the line there, and -2.5 is a number I could feel comfortable with for sure.
Yeah, definitely agree. I think the Jags probably win here. Three's probably about the right number here, so I don't know. You're not getting a ton of value. So, like I said, if you can get that -2.5, really the main thing to watch out for is this Jaguars offense that we thought was going to be really great. I don't know if it's because Peterson's not calling the plays or if he's going to start calling the plays. We got them 29th overall in third down conversion.
Yeah, not good.
Yeah, it's a good offense, man. You've got to be able to pick up third downs. Now, whether that's coming from not picking up enough yards on first and second, not completing enough passes on third, but should be a really good game over in London. Love when we send two good teams over there, trying to expand the league, and a good game to get your Sunday morning on.
Yeah, one final thought. Sorry, I just thought of this before the end. One thing with the Jags, after having the big week one and us actually having a little bit of a talk about him, Calvin really needs to get back going again. They need to get Calvin
Yeah.
going again. He had a huge week one, but would like to see him get rolling again. So let's see if we can get him back in the targeted area over there for Jacksonville.
And honestly, that could be the answer. To maybe their third down conversion problems
Yeah,
is having Calvin Ridley being open, those one-on-one matchups.
yeah.
But very interesting game. We'll definitely have a lot to talk about it next week after watching it. And we'll move on to the 1 p.m. games here. All right, folks, we've got a barn burner in our next game on the 1 p.m. slate. We've got the 0-3 Broncos, who only lost by 50 last week, against the 0-3 Bears, who stayed within 31 of the Super Bowl champs. So we've actually got the Broncos as a 3.5 point road favorite. You gotta love 3.5 points with the team that hadn't won a game yet. And then you've got the total over under 46 a gauge. What are your thoughts on this maybe game of the week?
Yeah, big time spot here for two really, really good teams here. Now, now see what I'm doing something crazy here this week. I'm doing something crazy here this week. I'm thinking I'm going to be leaning into the Bears here. Now, some people may want to call me a madman. Some people may say I'm just getting my lick back for being on the Broncos +6 and giving up 70 points. So call me a madman, call me what you want, but I think I like Chicago here. At home, keeping this game within a field goal. I think they got a chance to do that. I don't know if I'll actually play it, but I do think It's an honest look spot. Fields has got to get a little better. The offense has got to be a little better. The defense, I mean, they have to be better. But the same with Denver. Um, both teams got to prove it. I do think that 3.5 with the home team. I think you have a stat to back me up on that. But
That I do. So when two teams that are winless play in week four, the team that's the underdog actually covers around 62% of the time. So that's just blindly,
yeah,
two teams, which makes sense. You
yeah,
got two bad football teams, you do want the points.
yeah.
And I think it'd be very hard to ride with the Broncos after I have multiple times this year. I've got no more Broncos country. Let's ride in me. I did say last week on the pod that I was going to take the Broncos and maybe get a little egg on my face if it backfired. You can imagine how shocked I was seeing that 70-20. Only other fun nugget on this game. This is a game where two teams got outscored. 111-30 last week.
Yeah.
so, so this is a interesting one. Only way I'm watching this is through Red Zone.
Yeah.
But I do think if I was betting this game, I would be leaning Bears with you, because I can't let Russ cook anymore. I,
And it's so weird because the defense was so good last year, but now that I think
yeah,
they've kind of just, I don't know, it's rough out there in Denver right now. It doesn't feel like it feels like Sean Payton's getting a little bit of karma here,
yeah.
coming in there, so kind of big headed and cocky, and the comments he's made about the last coaching staff might be getting a little bit of a little karma here, but not a fun game, but it's definitely fun to talk about when you got this brutal of a matchup.
Listen, it's brutal when Mike White's throwing touchdowns to Robbie Chosen Anderson against you, and the team's wondering, do we go break the scoring record? We've got 70. The record's 73. Do we go put 77? But these are some of the games we do love to talk about. We won't be watching, but we do love to talk about. So hopefully, some people can make some money. And if you do end up riding Bears, go Bears.
Bear down.
All right, we've got a potential actual game of the week here, not just like that Broncos Bears game. We have the 2-1 Baltimore Ravens heading into Cleveland to take on the 2-1 Browns. So you said we're going to be pretty good, and I'm watching. They're pretty good. We've got the line at Browns -3. The total has moved down from 40.5. Unfortunately, we won't be able to give you the play that we were on, which was the 41.5, but still kind of like that 40.5. Gage, what are your first thoughts on this game?
Definitely my game of the week. I know a lot of people will be tuned into that Miami and Buffalo game, but I'm going to be tuned in here for this game here. I love both of these football teams. This is going to be my kind of football here. Should be well coached. Should be a clean game. Two teams that are just really physical and really getting the job done. The Ravens are super banged up, but what's new? 2 or 3 years, that's the same old story with them. And what do? They just continue to win double-digit games every single season. Harbaugh's doing an outstanding job there. I will say though, honestly, Lamar's not looking. I had Lamar honestly as probably I would have put a slip in for him to win the MVP this year because I was just really expecting a big year out of him, and it's not off to the start that I was expecting. And going in to the dog pound, going in to this probably top three defense in the league so far this year. Maybe even some people are going to argue number one. These guys have just been really, really, really good on defense. I think last week was the first time they led a team into the red zone,
It was.
which is just insanity. Of course, they've given up some big plays, but there's no such thing as really making a long down the field drive against these guys right now. They're just tough up front, tough in the secondary. But with this Baltimore team, you just don't see a team that ever really gets blown out. So this is just going to be a really great football game, in my opinion. Probably honestly won't lean aside. I will. We're on the under already. This is going to be just a 20-17, a 17-13, just physical, great football game that I will definitely be all over because these are two teams that I will be keeping track of for the rest of the year for sure.
Yeah, and honestly, I mean, a couple of reasons that one, we are going to love this game because you got to love a good AFC North divisional game, and that we're going to love the under. You've got the best team in red zone touchdown percentage against with the Browns with obviously 0% because as you were talking about, there's only been 4 plays running in the red zone against them in
That's
three
like,
games. We're not talking about first game of the year. These teams are finding it hard to just get 100, 150 yards against this team.
yeah,
That is not what we see in today's game where it's like, you hold somebody under like 250, like, that's a pretty good game.
yeah.
And we got the Ravens, who, even with missing a bunch of starters, are actually third in red zone TD percentage against. So you got 2 top 5 defenses in red zone touchdown percentage against. You've got the best statistical defense with the Browns. Not arguable at the moment. Like I said, we definitely think the 49ers and some other defenses could overtake them. But should be a great game. Like I said, even with the under moving down, probably the highest I see this getting is around that 20-17 number.
Yeah.
So under 40.5, still like it.
I'm fairly certain this game will be in the 30s at kickoff. I think this game could even get down to 38.5 by the time this thing kicks off with some sharp money coming in on the under. Definitely think it's going to be at least 39.5 by the time this game kicks.
Yeah. And with these two good defenses, like you said, you always can see crazy things happen. I wouldn't throw many anytime touchdown scores in this. I wouldn't be counting your money coming from people scoring against in this type of game where you're looking maybe 4 combined touchdowns. So you get some odds, but you can see a lot of field goals as well.
Right.
So good bounce back spot for the Ravens, but overall the Browns have been really solid, really close game. We love the under. We took it at 41.5. We'd recommend it at 40.5. And still love the teaser spot of the Ravens because that +3, get it up to +10.
Yeah.
And once again, you know the Tease the League boys are going to mention the teaser spot to you.
Always.
All right, next game on the 1 p.m. slate. We've got the 1-2 Cincinnati Bengals heading into Tennessee to play the 1-2 Titans. So pretty important game here for two teams that definitely have playoff aspirations. We've got the Bengals as 2.5 point favorites, and the total set at over under 40.5. So Gage, you've been a pretty good Titans better. Do you
Yeah.
have any good feel in this game or not really?
Actually, dude, you pretty much led me in right exactly into how I was going to lead this off. I pride myself honestly in the Titans and Browns, as weird as that sounds. And I usually feel like I cap the Titans really, really well, and I don't have a feel on this game. So this is probably going to be a layoff spot for me, just because the Titans haven't been quite as good as I wanted them to be. I've finally seen a couple coaching mistakes out of Vrabel, which I was always really, really heavy on Vrabel, and I just don't want to see that team fall apart. And I don't really know what I'm seeing out of them right now. With the Bengals, the same kind of thing. They got their first win last week, but it was not in very impressive fashion. Except the defense did play well. Chase got back into it, but Burrow, man, he just looks so bad to me. He can't move. He's just I don't really even know why he's out there.
So a little bit of a rhetorical question. As an OC with the face of your franchise who can't move, why are you throwing it 50 times in a game?
Yeah, and you could see if there was any pressure in there, he just had to get rid of the ball. There was really nothing that he could do. It was almost like a sitting duck out there, and you don't want to have your $100 million guy out there who's got a calf injury that we know leads into Achilles injuries. It's like, what are we really doing here? And I understand this team is built to win now that in the Super Bowl. They made the Super, so they obviously they have high aspirations, but it's a very thin line they're walking on right now. I don't want to wish injury on anybody, but honestly, for me, I wouldn't have Burrow in there right now. This is a very weird game for me that I'm probably going to end up staying away from.
Yeah, completely agree. Very interesting game to watch.
Yeah,
Because do we see the Bengals continue doing what they've done the past 2 years when they made a Super Bowl and then an AFC Championship, where every year they start slow and they pick up steam and they roll somebody, week 4, 5, 6. I don't know you're rolling the Titans, but I definitely can't bet the Titans here. Because to your point, like, I haven't seen as great of a coaching job. And the Bengals, where you can get them on defense, is both their starting safeties are gone from last year. But I'm not trusting Ryan Tannehill to push the ball down the field.
definitely not.
He's hit a couple big plays, and you'd love having Hopkins, but Hopkins is a hands guy.
Yeah.
He's making those tight contested catches. So maybe you got Traylon Burks, but if I'm putting my money down, there's a lot of other places I'm looking. Also, just to shout you out, you did once again Browns Titans last week, hit on the Browns spread and the under. So
Yeah,
still rolling. So I think when you're not really having to play in the Titans game, I'm right there with you.
yeah,
But
appreciate that.
all right, we got most people's game of the week here. The 3-0 Dolphins that just hung 70 points on the Broncos country. Let's ride. Going into Buffalo for a huge divisional matchup against a team that's already lost a divisional game, the 2-1 Buffalo Bills. We've got the Buffalo Bills as a -2.5 point favorite. And we got a super high total, which last week we gave you some TD props in. Maybe we have some more this week, maybe not. Total over under 54. So, Gage, what are your first thoughts on this game?
So, like you mentioned, the Bills being 0-1 in the division is a huge thing here, in my opinion. That's going to make me right off the bat lean into them a little bit, especially as one of the top contenders in this league. You don't really see them, start 0-2 in this division, probably, um, except for the fact that they're going against maybe the hottest team in the NFL, a team that, like you said, had to show some sportsmanship to not set the NFL record for points scored last week. So shout out to Coach McDaniels on that. But if it was me, I probably would have had to go ahead.
Yeah, putting your name in the record books would have been pretty tempting, especially when you're out there able to score touchdowns with Mike White to Robbie Chosen Anderson.
So with that being said, it's going to be a super tough task for Buffalo. But with them being such a good overall team, being in Buffalo and needing this for the division, I really do think that Buffalo gets the job done here. I think this is obviously last week we did a pretty good job looking at those games with the higher totals and looking for some props. I think this is another huge game for props, and like we've seen statistically, neither one of these defenses is great against the run. And when you have two high-powered offenses like this, you would think the game plan for both sides is going to be to run the ball to try to keep that other offense off the field anyway. So look into maybe some rush yard props here in this game. Josh Allen, James Cook, Raheem Mostert, Achane, all these guys are guys that you can look for some value on and maybe look for some ground yardage here in this game.
Yeah, absolutely love that thought. Because, like you said, when you're playing against a really good offense, one of the best ways to beat them is to keep the rock, keep the clock running. Put that ball on the ground. We've kind of already talked about it on our primetime video. Go watch that if you haven't already. Where we kind of like the teaser taking the Dolphins +8.5 and the Seahawks +7.5, but straight kind of leading the Bills here. So last year, Dolphins were pretty good as well. Couldn't go into Buffalo and win. That was a 34-31 game for the Bills. Kind of see it around the same thing. Maybe a little bit less scoring because we might get, running, but that 54 number is probably pretty spot on here.
Yeah.
So, any final thoughts on this big AFC East matchup?
Loving your analysis there. Like you mentioned, we are already on the Dolphins +8.5, but with these being two of the best teams in football in a divisional game, we can't see that game being a two-score game.
Yeah,
I think we had talked about maybe even like a little win margin total for either
love
side
that.
that you like with some really juiced value in the +2, +3, maybe even +400 for 1-6 margin because
Yeah.
we can't see this being a two-score game. So keep that in mind. But like we said, we do like the Dolphins since they are the underdog, being able to get those extra points. But as a straight pick, I think we are leaning Buffalo.
Leaning Buffalo, very intrigued at this game. I mean, this kind of puts either team starting to be in the driver's seat for the AFC East. Even if the Bills win, they'll be tied. But getting that win at home at Buffalo and kind of throwing the ball back in Miami's court.
Right.
Or if you see Miami go through and beat the Bills, then it's like, okay, this is for real now. We got to watch out going forward.
Yeah.
But great game. Some really good games in the 1 p.m. slate. This may be the best, but be very high scoring and probably the most fun to watch if you like some offense. All right, next game on the slate, we've got a divisional matchup between two 2-1 teams, which both a little bit surprising. We've got the Tampa Bay Bucs heading into New Orleans to play the Saints. Depending on which side you like, Vegas has 3 or 3.5 available on different books. Total at over under 39.5. So, Gage, what are your first thoughts on this?
Yeah, I understand the Saints being the favorite here with Kamara coming back this week, but it's definitely a game that we're not going to cap really quite right away early in this week because it's going to be one that we're looking at the injury report on. We're not sure if Derek Carr is going to play. The center Ruiz got knocked out last week, so going to have some new faces potentially there on the QB center exchange. I do like Jameis Winston. I think he's about as good as you get as a backup quarterback in this league. So maybe not as big of a fall off as you would expect from a starter to a backup. So definitely like the Saints as a favorite here. Don't like them enough to make a play. Probably going to be a little bit of a shy away game for me.
Yeah, and with you mentioning like could be a new center quarterback exchange, also calling out protections against Todd Bowles' team.
Yeah,
Very good defensive mind.
defense has been
Um,
playing good.
yeah, and so this game I could definitely lean the under. I could really lean either way on the teams. The under scares me a little bit because you got some big play guys. Like you've seen Mike Evans to make some big plays. You still got Godwin, and then on the other side, like Olave catches deep balls all the time.
Rashid Shaheed
With
having a
Heath
huge
and
year,
Heath.
doing all kinds of stuff.
Yeah, and then you get Kamara back, and that could be one. So a little bit scared, maybe some touchdowns. Overall, probably won't be a play here anywhere for the Tease the League boys. Very interested to see though, because one of these teams is going to move to 3-1.
Right.
We really haven't been high on either team, but hey, 3-1 is 3-1. You do not scoff at wins in the NFL. You take them and move on.
In a division that's going to be, super tight. If the Bucs were on nobody's radar to start the season, they were,
Nobody.
a team that everybody had probably as a top, I mean, as a bottom five team in this league. And if they could get, to 3-1, I'm not sure if they've won a division game yet or not, but even just to win the first division game, that would be huge for those guys.
Oh, a division game on the road is a monumental step. And like you said, like we kind of just were like, all right, no Tom Brady, like, and we forgot that hey, this is a pretty good roster. I
Right.
mean, like these are some guys that have playoff experience. Like that's a good roster, but overall, a game we'll definitely keep tabs on, but not really gonna bet. All right, last game on the 1 p.m. slate. We have the 1-2 LA Rams heading into Indy to play the 2-1 Colts. Both teams have been surprisingly better than we thought they were. So this is going to be a very important game to line shop. You can get +1 either way, which also means if you like teasers like we do, you can get +8 either way. This over under at 46. So, Gage, what are your first thoughts on this game?
Got Anthony Richardson coming back for the Colts, or at least he had a full practice on Wednesday, so I guess he's kind of leaning back to come that way. Which honestly, with Gardner Minshew in there, he looked much better than expected anyway. So not really sure if we see any real movement in the line there, but I think AR comes back, and this Colts D line has really been impressive for me. A group led by probably a top three D tackle in this league who doesn't get talked about as DeForest Buckner, who's just a monster, 6'8", just beast there in the middle, making tons of plays for that team, forcing turnovers left and right. Really like that D line, like that whole defensive unit. The secondary struggles a little bit, which is where they give up their big plays, but I do like that defensive unit. And then you've got the Rams, who may have the funnest team to talk about in on offense with Puka and Tutu. So those guys are really throwing the ball around like crazy. Stafford's just whipping it around. Whether he's probably going to be throwing the ball when he's 60 years old. He'll still be throwing it 35 times a game because he's just, I guess his arm's made of rubber. I don't know how this guy's still doing it, taking so many shots through his career, and still every week he drops back and throws the ball 50 times a game. So this should be a fun game. Not really a matchup that is a barn burner per se, but it would definitely be a fun game to tune into, watch some good D line play, and watch a young quarterback hopefully have a good game.
Yeah, like you said, if you are a D tackle or anywhere on the D line, very awesome game to watch because you either have DeForest Buckner on the field or you got Aaron Donald. Also, like you were talking about, like Stafford's still a gunslinger. I thought we were losing him last year when he got injured a bit. And really, I thought maybe you struggle a little bit to start the season with no Cooper Cup, especially because that's his guy. Like we saw when they won the Super Bowl, how well they were, working together and sitting down in zones and finding all the open spots. But two really surprising teams, and with you mentioning Minshew, like very important backup quarterback because we've seen AR leave the game early in week 1 and 2. So we've definitely seen Minshew play an important part. And we've seen Sykin, who I didn't give a ton of credit for with the Eagles, like running a pretty good offense here. So very intriguing game. We're gonna have other bangers on during the 1 p.m. window, so maybe won't tune into this a bunch, but would love to go back and watch this and kind of see how this one plays out between these two good teams. All right, and continuing rolling along on the 1 p.m. slate, we have what we're not going to call the brand new Commanders this week after they got rolled last week, but we've got the 2-1 Washington Commanders going to Philly to play one of the only three undefeated teams left, the 3-0 Eagles. Vegas has this as an 8.5 point favorite for the Eagles, and total set at 43.5. So, Gage, what are your first thoughts on this game?
So definitely not totally out on the Commanders. Last week against the Bills, I was pretty much thinking that that was either going to be, if the Commanders were going to win that game, it was going to be a tight, hard-fought game, and if it wasn't, then they were going to get blown out because the Bills were coming in with bad intentions, and that's a young quarterback, and they got the best of Sam Howell with I think 9 sacks and 4 interceptions. So. It was just a downhill slide, or just a kind of a snowball effect there, just a bad game for Washington. So I'm not fully out on that. But they, back-to-back games, Buffalo and then Philly. I don't know how much harder it can really get. So as much as I'm not out on Washington, I do think it's going to be extremely tough for them to get a win this week. They probably get knocked back to 2-2. It's a good thing they started out the season the way they did, getting those 2 early wins because these two juggernauts back to back is just a rough way to start the season with a young quarterback. So I don't have a ton in this game. I definitely think the Eagles get the job done. They just look really strong again. As much as I hate to say it, I thought they were maybe going to take a little bit of a step back, but it doesn't look like they have. Even Hurts isn't playing his best football yet, and they're just rolling. He picked it up with a little bit in the primetime spot last week, but um,
Like I said, there's been a lot of miscommunication, and I don't know. I think Shane Steichen leaving is probably playing a little bigger role than we thought was going to happen.
that was one of the reasons I thought they would take a step back once they lose their OC and their DC. But really,
Yeah.
they just got so much talent. They're just
And Gannon's doing really well in Arizona.
yeah.
I'll be honest, I was on the opposite train. I didn't think it was going to play a big impact, but now that I'm seeing the communication issues, but once again, we're talking communication issues when they won by 2 touchdowns, and we're like, oh, the Eagles don't look great.
This roster is just stacked. Like
It's that.
the Jalen Carter pickup is showing to
It's
be huge.
huge.
Yeah,
So they last year they had a real big problem with stopping the run,
yeah.
and they are fifth on yards per rushing attempt against. Now they're missing kind of some of the sacks, so we need to see Hassan Reddick, some of these other guys like come to life a little bit.
Well, let's not have them do everything. They can't be the best at everything.
Sorry, I forgot. I forgot. We got a Cowboys fan on here that wasn't too happy about the Eagles, even though he did eventually root for them because of my Eagles Super Bowl ticket, just because he's a good friend. But we got, like I said, should be a good divisional game. I think that 8.5 is pretty sharp. I think it opened at
Definitely.
7, and I might would have leaned Eagles there. Maybe a spot where you take like Eagles minus 2.5 or something because you get the revenge because the Commanders actually handed the Eagles the first loss last year, and I do believe was that game in Philly.
I'm not sure.
It,
I think it was.
Because I think they went on the road, and you
Yeah.
had that really weird non-call face mask on Goddard fumbling.
Yeah, and that was Heineke game, I believe.
Yeah, but like you were saying earlier, no shame if the Commanders lose this and go to 2-2. Buffalo and Philly, two of the best teams in the league, should be an interesting one to check the result. We're really not going to have a play. At least at maybe Eagles minus 2.5 is something here. Maybe a little tush push, Jalen Hurts touchdown. That's about it here for us. All right, our next game on the slate, we've got a matchup of two winless teams here. We got the Minnesota Vikings heading into Carolina to play the Panthers. We've got the Vikings as a 4.5 point favorite, started at 3.5 and it's moved up. Total of over under 46.5. So, Gage, what are your first thoughts on this game?
Carolina got Bryce Young coming back. Minnesota, not really. I don't know, they're finding a way to lose every game. Uh, Brandon Staley decided to give them the ball back on their own 24-yard line last week, and Kirk Cousins, Kirk Cousins just being Kirk. he's really honestly the biggest anomaly I've almost ever seen play the quarterback position. He's just in between 20 and 20. He's outstanding. He makes every single throw. He's just everything you can want in a quarterback. But then when it comes to those red zone situations and the late game situations, Kirk is just week to week. He just struggles, man. Like you said, they get to the 1 yard line last week and throw the pick. So two teams that are just sputtering right now can't really find a way to go. Not really sure how I'm feeling this way on this game. It's moved all the way out to -4.5 for the Vikings, so that's going to be hard to lay. But at the same time, I don't really know if I want to mess with the Panthers right now either.
Yeah, I was gonna ask. I mean, we kind of got our answer already, but I was gonna ask if you were leaning with that like 62% theory of the underdog covers in the matchup of winless teams, but it definitely seems like not really finding a way. And I don't blame you. I mean, like, who wants to really bet Vikings games? Did a good job Vikings Chargers last week, had the Jettis call out, and then you got the Mike Williams touchdown.
Yeah,
So two really nice call outs in that game. This game, if you have to bet aside, I definitely lean Panthers. If you're going to give me the home team with 4.5, like I'd lean it. Won't be able to get to the board with that. That's not going to be one you see on our card on Twitter. Overall, like I said, interested to see who wins a game here. Interested to see if it's a one-score game if the Vikings can win one because they're losing all their one-score games this year after being 11-0 and one score last year.
right.
But overall, well, that's kind of all we got for this game.